Hi, and welcome to Across the Deck. This week, we're going to discuss a little thing that kind of went under the radar over the last week and a half in a committee chaired by Sean Roberts. And this committee is the Oklahoma Public Health Committee. And what he did was invited a couple of doctors to come speak who are pretty well-known anti-vaxxers to discuss how mask mandates work and obviously, I guess, don't work. Sean Roberts put together an informational meeting with his committee, and what he did was he invited two doctors. Now, what's unusual about these two doctors is they are very much outside the mainstream thinking when it comes to things like vaccinations and wearing masks. The first guy he had in there, his name is Jim Meehan, and the guy has his own blog. He's got a crazy Twitter page. You should read his stuff. He's got videos on anti-vaxxing stuff. He's got stuff on the anti-flu vaccination stuff he's got on there. Not only that, he's a big-time Christian fundamentalist and really believes in QAnon theories and that the coronavirus is really just an international cabal of people causing chaos and death in the United States of America because, that's why our numbers are so high, because they're targeting us. Not that we're not doing anything here to take leadership and actually reduce our numbers in meaningful ways. No, we can't do that. As a matter of fact, this guy argues against all the science and all the data that even comes out of the Trump administration on what we should be doing to prevent the virus. And these are just the minimal things that the Trump administration is saying. This isn't even close to anything we're doing. Well, actually, in Oklahoma, it's even worse. We have the fifth highest transmission rate here. Right now, I just looked it up. We got the fifth highest transmission rate because, one, well, we have a governor who just doesn't really believe in this stuff. He doesn't believe in science. He's just not that kind of guy. So we get what we got, and that's a guy who is not a politician, who doesn't know anything about policy or law, who's looking through it through the lens of his religion, his anti-science stances, and the fact that he owns a financial company, which is the same thing as running a government. So anyway, that's what we have right now. So we have this guy, Sean Roberts, and his committee on public health in Oklahoma giving these anti-vaxxers a platform to speak at his committee. And Jim Meehan, who is an anti-vaxxer who came out to the meeting, one of the first things he said was, masks do not work. It's a big hoax. We shouldn't even be wearing them. That's what he says. And he also believes that we shouldn't be shutting down schools. He thinks it's more deadly to kids that they're staying home. That's killing them more than the COVID is, which is pretty much not true. And he keeps going on crazy fantasies and crazy conspiracy theories that he read in a meme, and he did this in a committee session on the record in the state of Oklahoma. It's kind of the clown show that we expect. Now, I don't know if you watch the show regularly, but if you had, I did a show a while back on the three stooges of the Oklahoma legislature, the clowny, kooky show that we're getting right now, which included just steadfast guys that are always clowns and kooks, like Nathan Dom. Well, this guy fits right in there. So Sean Roberts puts on this nice little circus show where he's the nice little ringleader and has a couple of his clowns come out and say that, one, masks don't work. Of course, this goes against all the CDC science and recommendations that say masks do work. They help to stop the spread of the transmission. Now, I get it. They want to look at this through the lens like, hey, it's not protecting me. So that's what you get. Of course, masks may not just protect you, especially if everybody else isn't wearing it, but that's not the point. See, the point of wearing a mask is not to spread it to other people if you may have it. Some people are asymptomatic. They don't even know. So wearing a mask is helping to stop the spread of transmission because it helps stop it at the mask. It just does. The science is there. The evidence is there. It is helpful. And it's not only can you see that in the data, you can see that what's going on with other countries. You can see that when I look at charts and I see the COVID numbers of other countries being really low and we're like way going through the roof, then yeah, they're doing something we're not, and it's working. And we ought to look at that. One thing they're doing is they've implemented mask rules and mandates so that they can mitigate the spread of the virus. We're not doing that here. We're not doing that in Oklahoma, and it shows. It's why we're a top 5 state when it comes to COVID related transmission. Yay, yeah, there you go. There you go, Stitt, right? Top 10 state. That's what he wants to be. It's just that we're top 10 in something we really don't want to be top 10 in. So really, we're at the bottom of the list if you want to look at it that way. When it comes to COVID transmission and what we're doing to mitigate that, we're one of the worst states when it comes to that. So we're not really a top 10 state when it comes to controlling this virus. We're really bad at it. The next thing this guy does, Jim Meehan, we got to go on, because this isn't it. I mean, this clown show that he put on goes a lot more than just anti-COVID vaccination and anti-mask. He goes on to say, of course, about the schools too. Hey, this is killing our kids more, keeping them at home. Crazy stuff. But here we go. The next thing he talks about, which is really over the top, that I really wanted to get to, was he said that the virus affects African Americans more because of the color of their skin. Yeah, that's what he said. He said since they're darker, they can't absorb that vitamin D that the sun gives them, which is kind of a crazy statement. That really has nothing to do with being able to take in vitamin D from the sun's rays. That has nothing to do with that at all. So that right there is an outlandish, crazy statement. And the fact that this is coming from a medically licensed doctor in Oklahoma is even crazier, in my opinion. He doesn't go on science at all. There's no science to that. There isn't any. There's no data. There's no evidence or proof that that is actually the case. That black people and brown people, well, they should be upping their vitamin D intake to avoid this virus, and that's all they need to do. But that's what this doctor wants them to do. That's what this doctor believes, and it's what he thinks. And he has no science to back it up. He has some kind of QAnon theories to go off of, and that's what he's basing his whole stance on, are these crazy, outlandish theories that, yeah, black people are more susceptible because the color of their skin doesn't allow them to absorb vitamin D from the sun. Yeah, that's what he said. So that's what you get with Jim Meehan and his stances on the coronavirus, mask, vaccinations, kids going to school, and of course why black people get the virus more than others. Now, the second guy that Sean Roberts marched out on his informational meeting when it comes to the Senatorial Committee of Oklahoma Public Health, this guy's name is Chad Chamberlain. Well, Chad Chamberlain is an ophthalmologist, so is Jim, the last guy. He's an ophthalmologist too. They're in the same field. I don't know if that's just a thing or what, but here's this guy, and he wasn't as kooky as Jim was, or as clowny, but still a bit out there. He was a little measured in what he said, but one of the things is, this guy is also an anti-vaxxer. He's an anti-vaxxer as well, came out and said that, and you can see in some of his materials in his Facebook post that, yeah, he is definitely an anti-vaxxer. He also wanted to say that the flu kills more people than the coronavirus, which isn't true at all, because when you look at the numbers, last year for the full year we had about 85 deaths from the flu. Well, this year alone, in the last 9 months, we've had 930 COVID deaths. So saying that the flu is more deadly than the COVID is just flat out wrong. The numbers, you can go see them yourself, and for a licensed doctor like this to say something like that is very discouraging to me. I really am a little concerned about that, actually, when it comes down to it. This guy's a licensed doctor in the state of Oklahoma. Now, hey, I'm sure he can have his own opinions and everything else, but when it comes to his practice, he should really follow the science on some of these things, especially the other guy, Jim Meehan. He should really definitely follow the science on this, because that's another licensed doctor in the state of Oklahoma with these kooky, crazy ideas that are really going to harm people and may get them killed, in my opinion, when they say things like don't wear a mask, it doesn't help. When they say things like, getting vaccinations, those aren't going to help. Not only that, they could actually hurt you, which is really silly. I mean, there's no scientific basis to that. There isn't any. It's very far and few between that you would even have a reaction to some of these things. These people are even against the flu vaccination, and they want to bring up the flu data against the COVID stuff. This is really out there kind of crazy stuff, and Sean Roberts totally supports this. As you can tell, these are the only people that he had show up to this meeting. Nobody else. Nobody from any health department or any kind of government agency that handles health, that would handle hospitalizations. Nobody from the hospital industry, nobody from anywhere else was there except these two kooky doctors. One of them has his own blog where he's a total anti-vaxxer, MAGA hat wearing guy, and that's who he invites to this to give an informed opinion to the state of Oklahoma, for the record. And that's what we get when we vote in crazy people like Sean Roberts. This is an obvious, out there kind of thing. It just blows my mind that we actually had a committee meeting in the Senate where we had two of the biggest conspiracy theory people out there when it comes to wearing a mask, where COVID came from, and vaccinations are evil, that we would have them speak. Not only that they would have them speak so forcefully, but that there wasn't any other side presented or anything else. We want this one side presented, and not only do they want that one side presented, we're going to push it way out there as far as we can get it. We're going to get the craziest wackos we can think of to speak at our committee meeting. And I'm just wondering what was going through Sean Roberts' mind when he said, I think it's a great idea to have these guys come speak at our committee meeting. I think it makes him look like a total clown, or at least a radical individual. QAnon stuff on Jim Beam's page, that's just way out there stuff in line of thinking. And this is just the kind of stuff that we're getting here in Oklahoma. And yeah, this really happened about. So we have Sean Roberts and his Committee on Public Health giving airtime and floor time to crazy medical doctors that have these outlandish theories that go against known science and most of the medical community. But that's what we get when we elect people like Sean Roberts to run committees like this. Now the sad thing is, in Oklahoma, we're probably going to see lopsidedness for a few different reasons when it comes to Republicans in our state legislature. One, it's gerrymandered. You can tell, look at this district, gerrymandered. There's no way a Democrat is really going to win this district anytime soon. It's just not going to happen the way the demographics lay out. So there's one problem we have, and it's one of the reasons why we have about 14% representation of Democrats in this state. That's one of the big problems we have, which doesn't help the other problem we have with recruitment. This year we have nearly 40 seats in the legislature that will be uncontested. In other words, Republicans are just going to walk right in, take that seat without a challenge, because no Democrat ran against them. They're going to get seated. Now, that's a leadership failure of the Democratic Party when it comes to recruiting candidates that can run against these wackos. So that's what you get. If we can't run against them and we can't win seats, well, we're going to get the craziest of the crazies. And we're going to get the craziest of the crazies like Sean Roberts to represent us. And then we're going to have them pull out guys like Jim Beam and Chad Chamberlain to even make us look even more clowny and kooky and at the bottom of the pile when it comes to states in the United States of America. So if you ever wonder, man, why is Oklahoma such a lousy state in a lot of demographics? Well, this is one of the reasons why, right here. Because we don't really have the type of representation we really should. because we really don't have a representative government. That's not what we have. Well, I know Republicans like to come out and say we're a republic, not a democracy. But really, you know what? They, as much as they hate democracy, they hate the republic too. They're not about that at all. They would much rather have a plutocracy ruled by the rich. And that's really what Republicans are for. They're not for a republic, because if they were for a republic, they would really care about equal representation of different demographics and groups, and that those people could have a nice and equal say in our government, because that's what republicanism is all about, is that it's representative of the whole of society. And that's not what we really have with Republicans today. Or have we had from them in a while. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Across the Desk with Cook Fairchild, and we'll see you next week.